I remember I went to New York and I stayed with a complete stranger who opened their home to me. And I slept on the couch for most of the time that I was there. And on the night before my audition, this friend of a friend of a friend, literally,
Yeah.
one of my really good friends, he knew a makeup artist who knew someone who lived in New York. And they organized for me to go stay with this complete stranger. And I just remember my parents going, "What do you mean you're going to go sleep on a stranger's couch?" And I said, "That's what I'm going to do. Like, if I'm going to do this, I've got to take risks. And this is the first risk. And I have to go into the universe and hope that goodness will come back." And so, and the best part is I slept on a beautiful plush couch. But then when I found out I was in the final round, this wonderful person, wonderful human being said, "Before your audition, you need a good night's rest. So you get the bed, I'll sleep on the couch." And that has got to be one of the kindest things another person has done for me. He didn't know the importance of going to Juilliard, but he knew that it was important to me. And he wanted to make sure that I was going to be okay. That even though he couldn't do anything else except make sure that I had somewhere warm to sleep, that's what he was going to do, and he was going to do it well. And I am forever grateful, because, yeah, that was just amazing.
Oh my God, what a story. And so how long were you at Juilliard?
I was at Juilliard for 2 years. So I went in end of August 2009. 30th of August, I flew over with my suitcase, and on a hot summer's day, landed there in the heat and moved into the Juilliard dorms for 1 year. I remember moving into that building. It was the tallest building I had ever experienced. Like, I had never lived so high in all my life. And I had 2 extremely educating, enlightening, exhausting years at Juilliard. And then September 2011, I packed up my stuff again from Juilliard, or from New York, packed up my bags on the 7th of September 2011, and I flew all the way to Germany by myself. So moving to New York and to Munich were the first times I had ever moved without the help of family or friends. I had to do it on my own. And I remember my mother, on the day that I flew to Juilliard, my mom was crying because she couldn't help being worried that she couldn't be there to help me settle in. And I remember once I landed in New York that I was crying because I just realized I have to do all of this for myself now. I've got to make sure that I've got the right bedding. And I mean, I was 26, but it was the first time that I was doing this all on my own, because until then I had always lived somewhere where there was family or my parents had helped me settle in. Like, my parents, we're very close because we've always just been the 3 of us. So for my parents and I, it's always just been the 3, this little pod of 3. We've either moved together or they've helped me move somewhere, and then they've helped me settle in, and then we've said goodbye. This was the first time that moving to New York was the first time that my parents just left me at the airport. And I still remember, because I knew that they were going to be so sad, I didn't tell them, but just as I was getting ready as my dad was taking my suitcases to the car, I had made them these little, because of all the long road trips, I used to always be in charge of the music for the long road trips. So I would make mixtapes. And so I made my parents like 2 mixed CDs that they could play in their cars, like separately, when they were on their way to work if they missed me. And it was just songs to remind them of me or of our time together. And I remember my mom sent me an email and she was like, how dare you make me cry even more.
Oh my God. Hey, so then you landed up in Munich.
Yeah. And I was in the opera studio for 2 years, and that was just crazy. You hit the ground running at an opera studio. I think that's one of the things that people don't really explain very well to young singers coming over to the European system of opera studios, because I think the American system of opera studios is a little bit different. The American opera studio or young artist program um, is more about rounding out the last bits of education that you had at master's level or graduate level.
Yeah.
The German system is cheap labor.
Yeah. Yes.
It's about them getting cheap labor and you gaining experience. So you sing every time you roll. You're going to. We had German class once a week because I could speak practically no German. I had, instead of 1 hour, I had 2 hours a week of German class. We also had 1 hour a week of Italian class. These were just language classes, and then you're in like your day starts at 10. The workday ends at 8 p.m. and there's this middle afternoon break. And so you go from 10 until 1, and then from 1 until 5, you have free. 5 until 8, you're working again, unless you have a show. But the morning would be filled with either rehearsals or coachings. The afternoon would be language class, solo practice, either more coachings, and then the evening would be rehearsal. And then I would go to bed. If I felt like I could risk going to bed early, I'd go to bed at like 10 p.m. Or if I felt like there was still stuff I had to get done, I would do like late night practice and like until midnight, because that was also the routine that I'd got myself into in New York, because when I was a student there, I had extra jobs to help pay for my education. I got a lot of scholarships, but I also still needed a little extra cash to pay for my rent and my living expenses. So I held down 3 jobs at school. And and because I was an international student, I wasn't allowed to work off campus. So I had to do all my work at the school because that was part of my visa. And so I would be at my first job at 8 a.m. until my 10 a.m. class. Then I would go to class. Then if I had free afternoon, I'd go do the second job. Then I'd go back to classes, do some rehearsals, and then I'd do my homework and practice in the evenings. And I'd usually get to bed at about 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my
and then
goodness.
You're up again the next morning at 6:30 so that you can be at work at 8. So I got used to doing late night practice. And so when I got to Munich, I just kept up the habit of staying late. And so what it also did for me is, if I stayed late to practice by myself, if there was a performance going on, I always snuck into the different shows and stood backstage. I watched Anya Harteros do Tosca so many times from the side of the stage. I've watched Kent Nagano conduct from the side of the stage. I've watched Asher Fish. I've watched Dan Ettinger. I've watched Kirill Petrenko conduct from the side of the stage. I've watched so many great conductors, and it's just been me like looking through tiny holes from the side of the stage, trying not to get into people's way. And I've listened to Johann Buerter singing one of his last Othellos, standing on the side of the stage. I've seen really great singers, and not sharing a stage with them, but just because I happened to be practicing and I wanted to take a break and I needed to go drink some water and walk a little bit to clear my mind. And if I would get stuck somewhere in my practice, I'd always just go to the stage, listen to someone singing. Like I've listened to Jonas Kaufmann sing so many times from the side of the stage, and something will happen. You'll listen to them sing a phrase that you're struggling with, and you go, oh, either that person struggles the same way I do, or, oh, wait, that sounds so easy, but what are they doing? And then I get to look at their body from the side of the stage and try to figure out what they're doing. And then I would run back to my practice room and I'd try stuff out, and it would just consistently inspire me. And so there was this wonderful cycle of inspiration that kept me going for 2 years.
Extraordinary.
But it's an exhausting thing. But if you go to a young artist program and you can just take as much as the company will take as much as they can from you during your time, there's such an opportunity for you to take for yourself. I found all the secret corners of rehearsal rooms. I became friends with every stage manager. so that I would always have permission from them to watch a rehearsal, even if I wasn't in the show. So I would stand in quiet places and I would sit and listen. I mean, I remember standing high in the rafters of a rehearsal room listening to Anna Netrebko singing Lady Macbeth, just because why not? She's here, I'm here, I'm gonna go listen. And so I would do that. But, I've never met this woman at all, never come face to face with her, but I just remember I've heard her work every moment of a phrase. And I've stood in the space, with Anya Hatteros going through her first Leonora in Trovatore, and watching these really great musicians and professionals find their way. And what being in a young artist program like this taught me, because it's such a high level, such great artists come through there. The one thing that I really was struck by is that everybody is trying to find their way, and that each way is unique and each way is catered to that person and their body and their temperament. And the thing that makes them the artist that they are is that they know that and they own that. It's the same lesson that my teacher taught me at the beginning of my time as a singer when I walked into that audition room. They know what they want from the experience and they're going to try to get it. And it's up to the other people in the room to say, it doesn't or it does work for me. But they know who they are and they're giving that at all times.
Wow. So first of all, I want to tell you, I woke up this morning with indigestion and a headache because things, our season is supposed to start up in October and there are still so many unknowns. Like with the US, the visa situation, the vaccination, because Canada is a different country and we have our own list of vaccines that will be acceptable for people to come into the country. We're not the United States, and the people in the United States and sometimes in England forget that fact. So things can unravel very quickly. So it's been a horrible couple of days, but you are like a bloody vitamin A, vitamin C, glass of champagne, vitamin D. You are the best thing that's come into my life in the last 6 months. You're just a tonic, Golda. I never expected this interview. Having watched you with Zolt, I never expected this. I mean, I feel like I've known you for 100 million years. I feel, and furthermore, I feel 10,000, and on behalf of my patrons, 10,000% more bereft that you're not coming to Vancouver. God damn it. So I have one thing to say to you, which is in my self-interest and the VRS self-interest, and absolutely not in your self-interest. Don't get too famous too fast so that I can't afford to bring you to Vancouver.
Oh my goodness. I don't think you can be any doubt of that. No.
We need you here. I need you. You are the most, oh my God. I've never met anyone quite like you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
That's so extraordinary. You've just done wonders for me. I'm going to walk on air for the rest of the day.
That's good news. I think that's one of those important things. You should never leave. Try not to leave a place worse off than when you got there.
Exactly. That's what I always say about my concerts. Our concerts. It's not my concerts. It's our concerts. Is that all I want is for the audience to leave the hall feeling better than they did when they came in. I want them to have a wonderful experience. I think a concert should either be phenomenally wonderful or terrible. I want to arouse people's emotion, because I think the worst thing anybody can do for music is be boring. That's the killer.
No, I feel like it's necessary. Like, I always try whenever I remember something Tara always reminds me of, that actually Tara and I remind each other quite regularly, is like, don't forget why we do the job. The job is for Joe and Mary Schmo in the back row. Like, they have names. Joe
Yes.
and Mary Schmo in the back row.
Yes.
They've come from a hard day at work. They've
Yes.
saved up their pennies for this experience. You Golda might not be having a great day, but they're coming for an experience. And your bad day shouldn't interfere with that. Your bad day has to be the fuel that gets you to open up a space for them to have a good experience. Because, a lot of people ask me all the time, what are you trying to achieve when you're on stage? And I am trying to achieve on stage the space where I disappear. I actually am not trying to be a person that you see on stage. When I'm doing an opera, I don't want people to see Golda. They have to see the character. They have to see that character's life playing out. And through watching that character, they have to find a space where they, as an audience, can connect to them and experience their own story being told in them through the music. So that the story that's playing on the stage and the music that's playing becomes the soundtrack to their own catharsis. I disappear. And the thing that I try to do in recitals that Jonathan and I really focus really hard on is that we want the story to come forward. Also, not, yes, I'm telling you the story and I want to engage you as a storyteller, but I want to engage you as a storyteller in the way that you would remember being told stories when you were a child at library storybook hour, that you are back there, that it's like being cavemen around the fire with all the darkness. And like, let's think about what this pandemic time has done. These 15, 18 months of the pandemic have done for us. These times have been dark. And now we are all huddled around a fire, hoping the dark doesn't get you. And the only thing that saves you is the story that we tell each other. And so that's what we try to do when we do recitals. We try to engage our audience in this storytelling so that they can find comfort in the dark.
Okay, so just, oh my God. One of the challenges of so-called vocal recitals is what they are called, okay? And I was chatting with Emma Nikolovska several months ago, and it dawned on me, why the hell do we call it a vocal recital? Why don't we call it an afternoon of storytelling? Because that's what it is. It's storytelling. And I think, so the other thing is that I'm trying to figure out a way to get the formality out of it. So I remember Joyce DiDonato once saying she hates singing to the top of people's heads because you put the text and translations in the program, and then many people sit with their bloody heads in the program, and then you hear 200 pages all turning at once, which is very awful. So then we got brilliant and said, okay, well, it costs a lot of money, but we'll try titles. Okay, we've done that a couple of times. But you know what? That also puts a layer between the singer on the stage and the audience. I think of course, it depends entirely upon the artist and the outlook of the artist and how they feel. I think it would be much more wonderful if the artist could walk out on stage and say, well, I'm going to tell you a bunch of stories about this, this, and this, and that. And that's what these songs are about, and then sing them. And not have any distractions around. And it's just, I want you to be with me and forget all that rubbish up there and the rubbish here. And,
anyway. But I think,
Anyway.
as you say, it has a lot to do, one, with the kind of artist, two,
Yes.
also with the way the venues are structured and shaped. I think, what I found really interesting was when we did our debut recital at the Boulez Hall in Berlin. I'm so sorry.
All in the world. Go on.
But there's something so special about it, because there's the stage is actually the bottom, and the faces and the audience goes upward. But when you're standing out there, you're actually making quite full eye contact, because most of the time the first couple of rows of audience are actually just in your eye line, and it's well lit to the point where you can actually see each other and you can make contact. And sometimes I find that really, really lovely. But then what you also then need, so when you have the venue kind of sorted, like, how can we change? I think what you have to do in those kinds of situations, it's not just shake up the artists, but shake up the audience and put them in unexpected places, so that it's the discombobulation that leads to vulnerability. And vulnerability can, if you let it, because being in a vulnerable space is scary, number one, let's all agree. But if you allow the fear to do its 90 seconds of circling through your nervous system, and you accept that it's there, don't try to fight it, but be in that vulnerable space of not knowing what to expect, something really special happens. Connection. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we connect. And it's a very strange thing, but I think I've been very fortunate. I learned that lesson very early on. I didn't know that was the lesson I was learning, but I learned that lesson very early. I learned that lesson through my stage fright. The day I told an audience that I was afraid was the day I was no longer afraid, because I showed them my vulnerability. They accepted it, not only accepted it, but welcomed it, because it allowed them to also not pretend to know what to do in the situation. Because how are you supposed to pretend to know what to do when someone tells you, I'm scared to be here? Do you boo them and say, well, then get off? Or do you say, I'm just happy that you made it this far? And I remember the awkward laughter of people going, oh yeah. And I remember I said to them, I'm so scared of standing in front of all of you. You guys are making me so nervous. So if somebody could just like do something that would help me not be nervous, that'd be so great. And them laughing awkwardly because they didn't know if it was a joke, if I was telling the truth, or if this was just a gag. The fact that I had totally taken them out of the moment and put them in a vulnerable space with me, put us all there together. And when they laughed awkwardly, I laughed relieved, and I could sing. And that, at that time, I didn't know that that's what I was doing. But that's always then what I've tried to do. I've tried to make sure that I connect with the people. And sometimes the way I connect with the people in the room is connecting really with the story that I'm telling, because that helps me. But what recently happened, with this new recital program that we would have brought to Vancouver,
which would have come to Vancouver,
we had commissioned this wonderful group of songs by Kathleen Tagg, another lovely South African.
Yes.
And poems by a very dear friend of mine, Leila Palmer, about, the female experience of motherhood, womanhood, what it is to be a woman, to be pulled in all directions and want to stay where you are, but also want to move to all these new life experiences, and the uncertainty of womanhood. All this music was then new poetry, new music, and bringing it to very traditional song recital venues, as tends to happen. The audience is always a little bit reticent about new music, and especially in German audiences, especially if it's English, they're like, oh God, is it musical theater? and so I remember Jonathan and I, it was our first time doing this now with an audience. But until then, what had been really interesting is we'd done it for radio, and we'd also done it on video. And in each of these experiences, we had been asked to talk about the pieces. And so when we did it for the radio concert, the radio recital for Bayerischer Rundfunk, for BR Classic, the moderator had said, "Oh, how long does it take for Jonathan to set up the piano? Because there's a lot of extended techniques, and he has to be in the piano bell quite a lot." And so he said, "Well, it takes me about he said I've got it down to about 20 seconds, but if I want to be really good, it takes about a minute." And so the moderator said, "Well, then why don't Golda and I just talk? We can talk about what you're doing." And I went a step further and I said, let's not just do that. Let's not just talk about the pieces. Why don't we do a demonstration of what he's going to do? So that way, when it's happening, the audience isn't so taken out of the music by what the hell's his head doing in the bell, that they can just know that, oh, that's just a part of this experience. And they can continue to listen. So that way they can accept the music much faster. And it really worked well. And even the moderator said, he said, "Oh, I've never thought to actually like do that kind of explanation and take people through what it is that they're hearing." And I said, "Well, you have to, because it's a new sound world, and it maybe sounds that they've heard in this way. So people need to know what's going on." And so when we did it then first, finally with a live audience, I remember looking at Jonathan saying, "I think we have to do this again." And he's like, "What?" I said, "We have to tell them what they're listening to. They're not going to know what to expect. So I don't want them to be put off. I want them to like the songs, because I think these group of songs are beautiful." And I said, "And I think you play them beautifully. And I want people to accept them, because if an audience can accept them, we're one step closer to another singer and pianist wanting to play them, because that's what we want. We want longevity." And so we did that. We explained it to the audience, and I even told them what the poems were about. I explained the poetry, and I explained the little nuances of the English language that they might not have understood, because English isn't their first language. And I remember so many of these wonderful, wonderful people coming after the concert and saying, my favorite part of the entire evening was that last group of songs. I loved it. And I loved the story. And it was so funny. And because you told us that the joke, and you told us that this was about like a conversation that you had with your mother, it just made it so much more special. And knowing that your friend wrote this for you, and it's from conversations, and seeing Jonathan play it just changed my whole opinion of the song. I think these are great, great songs. So many people came up to us and said, "This was my favorite moment," or "When Jonathan did this, I loved that so much." And I think that's the thing. Venues have to give artists permission to be people as well.
Totally. And, so I just discovered earlier this morning, I don't know how, I must have got an email from somewhere, which said that there had been a video. Oh, I know. Somebody is screening it and you can pay to watch. Is it somewhere I can't remember where it is.
I think that's the Washington Vocal Arts.
Yes, that's it. Washington Vocal Arts.
DC.
So I just shot off an email to your manager saying, once it's been aired on Washington Arts, is there a way we could buy the rights to show it to our people in Vancouver?
That's amazing.
Because this would have been and we'll pay you whatever, but that would have been our way of having this incredible program that you're offering. So I'm going to pursue her. I'm going to pursue Georgina and see if we can work something out. But I want to say one thing to you before we part. It's not only that I want you to come and sing in Vancouver. I need you to come and sing in Vancouver. Golda, this experience with you has been beyond extraordinary. And I just think you are one of the most remarkable people I have ever had the pleasure and privilege of connecting with. And please don't go too far away from me, because, I feel like you can give me advice. You can help me out with things, because I just adore the way you think. And you are so honest and so sincere and so passionate. And you're just a dream of a person, of a human being. So
Thank you.
give a big hug to Tara when you next see her.
I will. She'll be so sad that this conversation didn't happen with her in the room.
Oh my God, I can't imagine. I don't think there's any room in the world big enough for the two of you.
No, there's a lot of world, there's a lot of space for everybody. Yes. And I think it's a testament to her as a person that she is so large in personality, but she is never overbearing. And her gift is that in her great largesse as a human being, it somehow makes space for everybody else to be themselves.
Yes, but you know what? I think the two of you are almost like peas in a pod. I haven't actually stood in the room when you've sung, but from everything I hear about you and from everything you've just said, I think you're very similar. And it's just one little thing I want to ask you before you go. See, all those things that go back to the College of Music for 1 second.
Yeah.
When I was at the College of Music, so it was that old house that they built things onto. Did you?
The old house. Yes. So the old house is where administration is and most of the composition department. And then they built like a new a new brick section.
Exactly, in front.
Sure.
So I remember my cello, because I also had a second subject. So I went in to study piano, and they told me I had to do a second instrument. So I took the cello, and I remember at the back of the building, there was a turret. There was a turret in the building, and there was a dungeon. And my lessons at the cello were at the top of the turret. And I used to have to climb up the stairs with the cello for a cello lesson once a week.
Oh,
yeah.
That doesn't strike me as a good idea.
No. Anyway, God, that was eons ago. Golda.
Good time.
God bless you. And please,
thank you so much,
please don't ever go far, far away from me, okay?
No, but thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate it. And I'm very sorry that we can't be there in January, but hopefully we can find another date soon.
I really pray we can do that and knock the socks off the audiences in New York when you sing the Countess.
Will do my best. Thank you.
Okay. God bless you, Golda.
All the very best.
Look after yourself. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.